A few years ago I was disgusted with the way our politics worked. I just felt like throwing up my hands and saying it was hopeless. I decided instead to apply my skills in industrial engineering. I identified the root causes of the dysfunction and engineered a structure and system that would keep yielding desired results. This is an attempt to present my system in a way that is understandable to most political thinkers. Our congressmen are elected in jerry-rigged districts and are pressured into voting along party lines rather than for what they think is best for their constituency and the country. This gives us officials that often get off track and fail to do their duty to improve the lives of the most constituents possible. This proposal offers a path forward to change the way elections are held that will make enormous improvements in the process. We have a very diverse population that we claim is a melting pot. The problem is that it would make everyone indistinguishable from each other. We actually have is a mix of a whole lot of individuals. Each person brings with them different perspectives, experiences, capabilities, and ideas. Our challenge is to organize them together where the whole is stronger than the sum of the people. An important component for doing this is giving everyone a voice that adds value to the discussion and process.
Everyone knows we have a two-party system where the winner of elections are in control. People end up identifying with one side or the other, much like the way they pick sports teams to root for. There is a tendency to rationalize things we initially don't agree with in order to stay a member of the tribe.
The joining forces of everyone does not work if you first attempt to divide people into two groups then choose one group to lead. We need to bring everyone together but keep different points of view while being willing to adapt thoughts to develop robust solutions for the good of all. It is no wonder that many feel it is useless to get involved. They feel no politician represents their views. We see this is not possible in a two-party system. Lots of people say fixing our government is hopeless. We need to remember the government is by the people and for the people. It should provide structure, solve problems, provide safety, and create opportunities. We need to insist that there is a constant effort to improve efficiency at all levels. Only those who voted for the winner think they got their way. But many of those voters are forced to vote for the one they dislike the least, or others don't vote at all because they don't see that anyone truly represents their views. Many avoid politics completely because they feel their participation won't make any difference. Laws are passed that go one way when one side is in power, but when they go too far or fail to deliver, then voters give the power to the other side. It is like a pendulum swinging back and forth. This process of adjusting can take a very long time. Regardless of the reasons for failure, both sides blame each other, with the people not getting what they deserve from our government. It is possible to group into better similarities. Voters need to be able to choose a group that, at least, better represents their views than what they get from a two-party system. The big question is, how do we govern without one side in power? It is often thought of, like an army winning total power over a defeated army. The assumption is that the only way to get anything done is to have a majority of the majority to rule over everyone. This actually only ends up with representation determined by a relatively small percent of the total. This creates divisiveness and unrest in the population. How do you govern without one side in power? The first step is to allow multiple national parties that meet specific requirements. Instead of picking between two very different parties, you would be able to choose from several. This gives more choices to our people to pick representation that fits our views. Call it dual representation government, because voters in each district ends up electing two opposing representatives. The first step is for each national party that represents at least 15% of the population to hold a selection process to choose one candidate for each district. Each political party selects one of two pools that they want all their candidates to be included in. The same pool selected will be used in all states.
This is two sample ballots showing choices for a voters. The one on the right is for those registered as a progressive-leaning voter. On the left is for those registered as a conservative-leaning voter. The top two vote earners in each of the primary ballot in each of the respective districts will be entered into options for the general election. It is possible that there could be more than 3 parties on each ballot to choose from. As shown and determined by the voting on the primary ballots, voters narrow the choices to 2 on each side for each district.
In the general election, each person votes for one candidate from the conservative pair and one from the progressive pair. Only 2 candidates are available from each side. The result for each district is that we end up with 2 representatives. One from each side. The only way for a person to be elected is to have some appeal to both sides. You can see the resulting parties for each district can be different. Voters from both sides are needed to elect all candidates to the office. The resulting body of the House can have members from as many of parties as were qualified nationally. The House leader elected by the whole body truly has to represent the whole House. Obstructionism likely would not happen. The structure would lead to routine compromising and deal-making in order to create acceptable laws. Both representatives has to satisfy both sides of the home electorate in order to be re-elected. They each would vote their own conscience instead of party lines. Laws would tend to be more centralist and less extreme and divisive.
This structure expands voter influence. This method of selecting representatives is not limited to any one level or any one country. Many foreign governments could make multiple divergent groups or religious sects fairly included in their governing bodies. This concept where parties nominate their candidate to a left or right pool, then everyone approves their favorite candidate, one from each of the 2 competing pools to represent them, becomes the cornerstone of this process.
Presidential elections. Eliminate the electoral college system. Every vote in the country needs to have the same weight. Allow multiple qualified parties to each select a candidate to compete in a national primary that narrows down the voter selection to 2 candidates. Restrict the general election to 2 candidates as determined in the national primary.
Senatorial elections. Consider using each state's governor as one of their senators. These are the officials that has to get things done in the states. For this to work, much of the work has to be done from their state capital. Use remote meetings, voting, and procedures for much of the Senate's business. Technology has evolved so this can be practical. This makes it harder for special interests to have access and influence votes.
Let the discussions continue. This ends the presentation.